Jai Guru, everyone.
Jai Guru.
Jai Guru.
Welcome to minute 27 of our podcast, Awake Minute by Minute, where we're reviewing the life of Yogananda and the movie in minute detail. With us, we have Rodrigo. How are you doing, Rodrigo?
Hi, guys. I'm doing well. Jai Guru. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Tell us a bit about yourself. You're from Brazil, right? Brasilia?
Yes, I'm from Brasilia. It's the capital of Brazil. I'm 30 years old now. And what else? I'm a baby Kriya Band devotee.
When did you have your initiation?
I had my initiation in 2018. So
not so baby.
Yeah.
Because that would make Chris prenatal. He hasn't had his yet. But Rodrigo, tell us how you came to Yogananda.
Well, I read the autobiography of Yogi in 2015, February of that year, and it was a very difficult phase for me. I was very depressed. I spent a whole week in bed, asking myself what was the purpose of this life, and came into a wrong conclusion that probably there was no objective at all of being here. So a friend of mine, he advised me to give it a try and read the autobiography. So I went to the store and bought it and read it, and now I'm here.
Sounds like a good friend.
Yes, the best of them.
And when did you watch the movie Awake, and what did you think of it?
Well, every time I watch it, I observe something new, and for me, it's very beautiful. The first time I watched it in the cinema, I was with my wife, and as soon as we went out of the room, she started crying with no reason, apparently no reason. It was very moving for us.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yes.
Mike, how are you doing?
I am excellent. I had a question, Rodrigo. Is your wife also on the path?
Yeah, she's a student right now. Yes.
Oh, that's so nice when you can do it together as a couple.
Indeed, yes. We can share some thoughts, and especially the routine. I think it's very important, right? To have the time to meditate in the morning and evening. I think that's very important. So it's good to have a student by your side. Yeah.
I think it's already great if your partner understands that you're doing this. If your partner even does it with you, it's even better.
Even better, yeah.
And Chris, does Barbara do it? Does meditate with you?
I don't know if this is actually allowed or not, full disclosure, but we read over the lessons together, and that's lovely. I read the lessons, and she might ask me to read out loud, and we share this mode from time to time, not all the time. So that's guilty as charged, but I'm very blessed to have my fiance who's very interested as well in the spiritual path. But I have a question actually, Rodrigo. Brasilia, what's it like there for the SRF scene? Do you have a group? Do you meet up with people?
Yeah, we have a group. We're starting to meet again personally this month, and we are around 30 or 40 devotees, and we have a temple here, so it's very special. You are welcome to come visit us sometime.
If I'm in Brasilia, 100% will. It's only a 1 hour flight, I think so.
Yeah. Where are you located right now?
I'm south of Belo Horizonte in the
Oh,
countryside,
okay.
but not too far. Similar
Yeah,
sort
yeah,
of surrounded by nature, mountains.
yeah.
It's great.
That's good. That's good.
Before Chris talks about the weather in that area,
Weather.
we'll move swiftly on to the minute to the minute.
We all noticed the big jacket you're wearing. Brilliant.
Jealous.
Cold.
Yeah.
Wind. Okay, so let's talk about the minute 27. So we ended last minute where Sri Yukteswar kind of, or it's narrated that he's going to open within young Mukunda the eye of wisdom. So we're going to start this scene by really talking about the Samadhi experience that Mukunda goes through. And that happens before he becomes Swami Yogananda. And before he becomes Swami Yogananda, there's various parts of his life that we want to discuss briefly. But in the rest of the minute, there is, there's words like yoga is freedom. There's an old man that says that, and then there's Russell Simmons that says that needing nothing, that's yoga. And then there's a brother Vishwananda who comes in and he says, being one with peace, joy, love, that's your true nature. And so we'll discuss all of those in some detail. And then there's some very lovely pictures of Guruji on a push bike and a young boy Mukunda. That's the image, the front cover of the book Mejda, I believe, and some other little pictures. So we'll discuss those in some detail. Rodrigo, you probably did some homework before coming onto this minute. You've been talking.
Yes.
What did you think of the minute in question? Randomly, we randomly selected you for this minute. But what did you think?
Yeah, I was so happy you chose this minute because it's very beautiful. It's so much content in just 60 seconds. All of these quotes you just brought to us, they are so powerful and so deep that you can read it and make a brief meditation on that because it's very beautiful. And starting with the cosmic experience of Guruji, it's very beautiful indeed.
Yes, we're going to discuss that in some detail. But Chris, in the timestamp 26.35 seconds, what happens? Do you know? Or
Say that again. At time point.
Timestamp 26 minutes and 35 seconds of the film. Tell me what happens.
Can I pass on that? is that passable or not? I mean, I can get the answer. I can get the answer.
No. I just wanted to try to give you the worst possible hospital pass in the history of hospital passes. But let's talk about.
You got me on that one, yeah.
Usually you have a guess and stuff. Last time I asked you about that scientific question about those enzymes and stuff, and you actually passed it somehow. But that one, I think I've beaten you.
I'll get you back.
Okay, so let's talk about the opening the eye of wisdom, shall we? So we have, guys, can you open up the card, chapter 14, Samadhi experience? So we're going to talk about in the autobiography of a yogi where it leads up. So it's chapter 14, which is an experience in cosmic consciousness. And of course, we have that beautiful poem, Samadhi, which we're encouraged to memorize. But there's some really profound bits before that poem, which I really wanted to discuss. So Mike, do you want to read the first bit through Yukteswar in the description?
Sure. He says, I do not expect anything from others, so their actions cannot be in opposition to wishes of mine. I would not use you for my own ends. I am happy only in your own true happiness.
Chris, the next bit.
Paramahansa Yogananda replies, Sir, one hears of divine love in a vague way. Today, I am indeed having a concrete example of it from your angelic self. In the world, even a father does not easily forgive his son if he leaves his parents' business without warning. But you show not the slightest vexation. We looked into each other's eyes where tears were shining.
So that's quite a very lovely setting up of the beautiful narrative that's about to unfold, Rodrigo. What do you think of that setup? That chapter is probably one of the most special chapters, isn't it, for most of us?
It is very beautiful. I think one of the things that caught my attention is that it's so intimate. It's a story so private from Guruji that he decided to share with all of us. And it's like it's almost like you're there watching this scene happening.
Yeah, and can you visualize them looking at each other with tears, just pearl drops of tears? It's
exactly.
It's enough to melt any heart, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, it's very emotional. I mean, this theme, what we just read, it ties in with what we said last time, that a true guru is not in there to make you his servant or something. He's in there to free you from delusion. And so that's why he says, I am only happy in your true own happiness. And also that I'm not doing this for my own ends meet. And those are probably exactly the words that Yogananda wanted to hear when he was in there.
Chris, thoughts?
Yogananda talks a lot about love, doesn't he? And the power of love, and rating the magnetism using, the power of love to attract God. And when I read this, the feeling is one of, magnetism. It must have been such a strong, magnetic pull for God to kind of come into that space that they were creating together. And I suppose that's a bit of a secret, isn't it? The unconditional love that they both had for each other and the power that would have brought to attract, God there. Yeah, it would have been amazing, really, to be there to share it. But that's what comes to my mind, really, when I hear this, the unshakable love that they had for each other.
Right. And now what happens is Mukunda is then meditating, and Sri Yukteswar interrupts him, and Mukunda gets annoyed that he's being interrupted whilst meditating. And Sri Yukteswar says, I know how you are meditating, my guru called out, with your mind distributed like leaves in a storm. Come here to me. Is that how you meditate, Rodrigo? Is that what you experience? Leaves
sometimes, yeah.
distributed.
Most of the times, unfortunately.
And how do you overcome that?
Well, we have to keep faith in ourselves, right? I always remember a talk given by Swami Yogananda, where he talks about this part of the book, and he says that we have to have faith in ourselves because right before Guruji had a cosmic experience, he was having a broken meditation, let's put it that way. So and right after he had his cosmic experience, so we never know, he might having a bad meditation full of thoughts coming and going, and then suddenly it's our time to have this sacred experience. So yeah, I keep faith.
Yeah, because grace can happen at any point, can't it? Can descend on you.
Yeah, thank God.
Mike?
Yeah, that's also a really good visualization. Imagine you meditate and you feel like you're not going deep. You can imagine Sri Yukteswar says, come, let's meditate together. I'll knock you on the forehead.
Yes.
I heard a talk of Brother Satyananda recently about going deep in meditation. And he said one of the things he recommends is remember the moments where you went deep in meditation and try to visualize them while you're meditating, which I found quite cool.
Chris, how do you overcome?
Do I overcome it? I think there's an assumption in that question. I recently read, the Gita, Paramahansa Yogananda's commentary of it, chapter 645, and it talked there a little bit about the concentration levels as a yogi goes through the gears, let's say. And one of the final levels of concentration is not to ever be disturbed by restlessness. But before that, you have this blend of calmness and rest states of the mind. And this kind of reminds me of that. It's probably the ego or the restless, it's the last roll of the dice kind of thing before Yogananda kind of broke through. And he's, I don't know, from the question to the audience, but has Yogananda talked about his mind being restless after this event? I'd be interested to know, because maybe this was the last moment where he was into that final stage of calmness, of calm activity.
That is a very, very astute observation, Chris, because I do not believe there is another part where he does. I think this is the culmination. It's like the kettle is boiled and the steam and the whistle are going off and spewing forth from waves of bliss. Yes, it's a very good observation. Actually, we're going to talk about the experience of samadhi and the culmination, and what that actually means according to the to different parts of the autobiography in a second. But let's carry on with the narrative. So he gently struck. This is what Yogananda says. He struck gently on my chest above the heart. Now, Mike, you said he struck gently on the forehead. And I think this happens. Wrong. This happened, no, but you weren't wrong, because this happens in other parts of the book, doesn't it? Like different people strike people on the forehead, don't they?
I think it was Babaji did it to Lahiri Mahashaya. He struck him on the forehead.
Struck him. Yeah. Good memory. You've recovered.
Is this to do with the chakras, do you think? Like where might finally need some kind of...
This is a very interesting question, actually, because if Babaji struck him on the spiritual eye, and Lahiri and Sri Yukteswar struck him just above the chest, which would almost imply above the heart or above the just above the anahata, which is that. I wonder if there's any significance in that.
Because he had his heart broken, didn't he, with his mother? So maybe he had some kind of final bits there to work through. I don't know. Question to the audience. Who knows?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
what does the audience think?
Yes, please come back to us. So he struck him gently on the chest above the heart, and now we have a fantastic, probably, again, this is probably in my top 3 or 4 or 5 of the moments in the autobiography where he's describing this experience now of what happens when Sri Yukteswar allows him to go through this. So Rodrigo, do you want to just describe that first bit in the autobiography?
Yeah, sure. My body became immovably rooted. Breath was drawn out of my lungs as if by some huge magnet. Soul and mind instantly lost their physical bondage and streamed out like a fluid piercing light from my every pore. The flesh was as though dead, yet in my intense awareness, I knew that never before had I been fully alive.
Wow, that's just 2 or 3 lines, but look at the force and the power of the description of the words. What did you feel, Rodrigo, when you first read? Can you remember when you first read such magic? Can you remember your experience?
I cannot remember the very first experience, but I think every time I read it or I heard it, it's like the first time. My body becomes lighter, my mind becomes quieter, and I'm full of hope someday we'll get there.
Mike? Yeah, go on, Rodrigo. Sorry, finish.
Anytime now.
Applies for all of us. Yes, Mike.
Are you asking me how my first Samadhi experience was?
I don't
Please
know,
do
Mike.
share, Mike.
You haven't told me about your thing. Maybe you did have it without telling us, Naughty.
I have nothing to add here. I would like to experience all of this. It sounds great.
Chris, what do you think of those words?
I do actually remember where I was and what I was doing. I was lying in bed, reading, and I was completely in rapture, of reading this. And I suppose looking back, it either felt like I was very close to the book, or I was just so engrossed in the book, nothing else was existing for me at that time. So completely transported into the moment of what Yogananda goes to great detail here to describe in the way that he does it. And again, going back to that 645 Gita verse that I read, that talks about it was Lahiri Mahashai's interpretation or study of birth and death and the cycles that we go through. And talks about the body kind of going through the esoteric births and deaths of the breath. So every breath that we have and every sleep that we have. And in Kriya Yoga, the process there is essentially these mini births and deaths, and that is the reincarnation. And when I read this, it just triggers these memories where he was essentially relieved of these reincarnation cycles in some way, and he was no longer attached to his physical form. So it's really beautiful, isn't it? It just fills me with like inspiration, awe. It's really lovely to read.
Good. Let me read the rest of that paragraph. So it continues, my sense of identity was no longer narrowly confined to a body, but embraced the circumambient atoms. People on distant streets seemed to be moving gently over my own remote periphery. The roots of plants and trees appeared through a dim transparency of the soil. I discerned the inward flow of their sap. Any reflections?
Amazing. I mean, how you suddenly perceive not just a thing in your immediate vicinity, but everything that goes around everywhere, how you are suddenly able to perceive so much more. Just sounds really hard to imagine, but I really like also that he says that, when people think about samadhi or enlightenment, they often think like that their individuality will get lost somehow, but that's not what he says. He says that his individuality gets expanded into this big thing, which is a part that I thought about at times, and he clears it up here. He clears it up in many other parts as well. Yeah.
Chris, do you want to go?
Yeah, it kind of links into what science, modern science, is unveiling. The nature of reality, which ties into exactly what we're talking about in this minute. The definition of yoga and the union that we actually have, unbeknown to us, in our daily lives with everything and nothing. And how do you say this? The circumambient atoms, yeah. It's difficult to say. Circumambient atoms, and his use of language here is just so impressive. I love it. But is the atoms and the subatomic particles and everything that goes there. It's science is really unveiling this bit by bit, right? So he's so far ahead of his time in the way that he speaks and how he actually communicates the nature of reality to us. And it's one of these things that it's going to age really well. We've talked about that. Some of Yogananda's insights. It's going to age. This is going to age really well, I think.
I would hope that it ages perfectly, somewhat like the Bhagavad Gita. It timeless, isn't it? It will apply to every single age. I would hope
it already has.
Yeah.
I mean, it was written in 1945 or something like that, right? And now you read it and it doesn't sound like an old book. It still holds truth for us like it was written yesterday. And probably in 100 years, it will still be like that. And then we might look at to some parts of it that we don't understand right now and see, oh, he meant that, you know?
Definitely.
Yes.
Rodrigo, any reflections before we go to the second paragraph?
Nothing to add right now. I agree with them.
Mike, do you want to read the second paragraph of his Samadhi experience?
The whole vicinity lay bare before me. My ordinary frontal vision was now changed to a vast spherical sight, simultaneously all perspective. Through the back of my head, I saw men strolling far down Raigath Lane, and noticed also a white cow that was leisurely approaching. When she reached the open ashram gate, I observed her as though with my two physical eyes. After she had passed behind the brick wall of the courtyard, I saw her clearly still.
What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, this kind of idea that, I mean, that's probably not the point of Samadhi, but but you have this, you basically have this really increased vision of what's going on around you, which is fantastic. And the way he describes it, like it must have been not just a second or something. It's because he waited till the cow goes into the ashram and then passes it by, and and he can probably focus on multiple things at once and just pick some of them out and describe them.
It's quite comical in a way the way he describes it, isn't it? He says, through the back of my head. You know, why would you say it like that? You know, and it makes me think the experience must be so difficult to actually put into words, that we live a life daily, you're quite limited in the reality of what, you know, God might experience reality in the sense that he talks about the physical eyes, and they have such a limited periphery vision. So it's just quite a captivating way to describe it. Yeah, saying, you know, having eyes in the back of your head is not a literal interpretation here. It's you don't even need them in this sense.
So it's not just, it wouldn't just be 360 degrees vision, would it? It would also be up and down 3D.
Yeah.
It would be 3D, multi-dimensional, and also the fifth dimension of time. So he's going backwards and then forwards in time, because he says in different part of it, he says present, past, future, no more for me, doesn't he? Describes that. So that all-seeing eye extends to an insane field of vision, doesn't it? Or field of view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Third paragraph, Chris, do you want to read it?
Sure. All objects within my panoramic gaze trembled and vibrated like quick motion pictures. My body masters the pillared courtyard, the furniture and floor, the trees and sunshine. Occasionally became violently agitated until all melted into a luminescent sea, even as sugar crystals thrown into a glass of water dissolve after being shaken. The unifying light alternated with materializations of form, the metamorphosis revealing the law of cause and effect in creation.
Wow.
Intense. You know, I don't know if it's appropriate to say, but I'll say it anyway. It's interesting. Meditation is something that, you know, you're kind of in a sense playing with the chemistry set, and I know maybe Frankie in particular might know the language that Sadhguru uses about this, that this is nature's greatest chemistry set. And people go to drugs, for all sorts of trips, to have these certain experiences that in meditation, maybe you would have something similar. And just reading this, it actually makes me think, like, how many people describe, hallucinogen experiences in kind of similar, shape-shifting dimensional experiences. Guruji is doing this through pure, meditative, spiritual processes, and it just makes me quite interested in the nature of reality, is how we perceive things with consciousness, and how we actually process things. So, going off track a little bit there to bring it back, it is spectacular, isn't it?
Yes.
The atoms vibrating, and almost like a simulation. Like Guruji talks about it like a motion picture, right? Forming, and everything is here for our own pleasure of experience. So yeah, it's just mind-blowing, really.
Yes. And it is impressive how Guruji could put all of that in words, because it's so abstract in a sense that he could write it down, and it's really hard for the mind to grasp it, but it's very beautiful.
It's like the whole of creation is like falling apart in front of him. It's like a curtain lifting slowly, like everything that was real for him. I mean, he's an avatar, he probably seen this before, but like everything that was real for him was suddenly showing itself as what it was, just some light manifested as matter, and it all dissolves in front of him, and he sees it all as what it really is.
Absolutely. It's the wording is Rodrigo's. It's very spot on. To word it as well as he has is nigh on impossible. And this isn't even poetry. Like, poets obviously can have done this in the past, describe such experiences, but this isn't poetry. It's almost matter of fact English, isn't it? Which is
Yes.
Which is just unique in the whole of the literary history, isn't it? This kind of explanation and description. It's insane, really.
Yes.
Just to kind of backtrack on what I was saying before, it reminded me actually of the Starry Night. Sorry, who's the artist of the Starry Night? I forget.
Van Gogh.
Van Gogh, and the interpretations of reality that artists have, and the kind of shape-shifting nature of reality. The more you peer into it, it's just spectacular, isn't it? It's really epic to read this. Really, in a word.
Mike's probably more in tune with Picasso, aren't you, Mike?
Sure.
Picasso,
and that tissue, and that was that famous tissue, that painting with the tissue and the different triangles, and is it? Well, I've forgotten what it's called, but that's the famous one, isn't it? Shape-shifting image.
Look at the painting behind Mike. It's kind of
that's
great,
not a Picasso. Feels a bit like that feels like a Monet. That feels like a Monet.
Like Picasso would have made this all into cubes there.
That feels like a Monet. There's a famous painting that looks similar to that. Yeah.
Fine.
I'll take that.
And on that note, basically for podcast listeners, it's like a very picturesque sunrise or sunset with the Guruji on that famous picture of Guruji on the boat sailing away into the sunset, which leads nicely onto the next line of the poem, or not poem, or AOY. An oceanic joy broke upon calm, endless shores of my soul. The spirit of God, I realized, is exhaustless bliss. His body is countless tissues of light. A swelling glory within me began to envelop towns, continents, the earth, solar and stellar systems, tennis nebulae, and floating universes. The entire cosmos, gently luminous, like a city seen afar at night. glimmered within the infinitude of my being. The dazzling light beyond the sharply etched global outlines faded slightly at the farthest edges. There I saw a mellow radiance, ever undiminished. It was indescribably subtle. The planetary pictures were formed of a grosser light. That's almost describing, Mike, your painting in the background.
Sure, yeah.
It really is. And similar to Chris's point about Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night as well, isn't it? So artists, it seems that so it would appear that artists do this with their paintbrush. I wonder if it is within their experience. Well, it must be. If it's in their mind and they're painting it, then surely it must be in their experience. Otherwise, how can they put such beauty in paint? Rodrigo, you're nodding. Are you an artist?
I'm not. But in fact, I'll go ahead, Chris.
No, go, Rodrigo.
Go for it.
Yeah, in fact I watched Van Gogh's movie, and the movie shows some parts of him having these hallucinations, where he couldn't quite differentiate nature, and everything is kind of blurry in front of his eyes. So maybe they do experience something.
I wonder if it's helped along by magic mushroom or not. But no, I
Chris has got an obsession with mind-altering drugs.
Let's talk about LSD. No, it's just a form of communication, isn't it? Painting and not artwork, and whether it be in words or using the paintbrush. It's either way. It's beautiful, and Guruji does a great job in his poetic language at pulling this reality closer to our conscious understanding. And really acts like a inspiration, really, doesn't it? And I agree with you, Frank. It's probably the most influential kind of bit of the autobiography, really, because it's the highest attainment or getting close to the highest attainment that we can really hope to achieve in this lifetime. Samadhi states and omnipresence or universal consciousness achieved. Beautiful.
Mike, any reflections?
Yeah, I mean, it is so beautiful how he describes this. I mean, what does that even mean? A swelling glory within me starts sweeping. What does that even mean? I mean,
began to envelop town's earth. So it's like an expansion of. I think that's a meditation. We're taught that meditation. I think in between the one of the I think is it in between? Yeah, after Hong So is we're taught to expand our. So in the stillness, try and expand your consciousness to include your room, your house, and it goes on to the farthest limits of the known existence. Yeah. Or anything known within your grasp, because there's obviously lots that's outside of your grasp.
I always wanted to ask, maybe this is a future question, about the, Guruji talks about universes, plural. Does he mean like, in the past, in the future kind of tense? Is this like a timeless reference, or does he mean really present reference? I don't know.
Or
Make sure.
Does the speed of light apply for your consciousness as well? And theory of relativity? Probably not.
Definitely not. Categorically not, yeah.
Mind blowing. Rodrigo, do you want to read the next paragraph? I've sent it to you.
Yeah, sure. The divine dispersion of rays poured from an eternal source, blazing into galaxies, transfigured with ineffable auras. Again and again, I saw the creative beams condense into constellations, then resolve into sheets of transparent flame. By rhythmic reversion, sextillion worlds passed into diaphanous lustre. Then fire became firmament.
Mind blowing. That's almost like he's talking about creation and destruction and the cycles of like the Big Bang and things like that. Would you would you agree?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
What does sextillion worlds even?
I googled it.
What is
It's a really-
sextillion? What number
It's
is
a really big
sextillion?
number. It's a really big number.
Yes.
Who can get closest to it?
I reckon
So-
10 to the power 15. I reckon. Oh no, 1,000 to the
really?
7th power. So 10 to the 21. Wow.
10 to 21.
Yeah.
A trillion billion followed with 21 zeros. Yeah. That's quite
Yeah.
good.
I wonder who uses that word generally in physics. I doubt many people.
I mean, I'm surprised they only said sextillion because there's septillion, octillion, non-illion, decillion, undecillion. I mean, there's a lot more. I mean, is it only sextillion? Is that greedy to say that? I think so. Quite specific, in other words, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
Mike, do you want to read the next paragraph?
I cognize the center of the empyrean as a point of intuitive perception in my heart. Irradiating splendor issued from my nucleus to every part of the universal structure. Blissful Amrita, nectar of immortality, pulsated through me with a quicksilver-like fluidity. The creative voice of God I heard resounding as Om, the vibration of the cosmic motor.
Nice. Chris, next para.
Suddenly, the breath returned to my lungs. With a disappointment almost unbearable, I realized that my infinite immensity was lost. Once more, I was limited to the humiliating cage of a body, not easily accommodative to the spirit. Like a prodigal child, I had run away from my macrocosmic home and had imprisoned myself in a narrow microcosm. Yeah.
So back down to crashing back down to
Literally, yeah. It's quite impressive. He doesn't really pull any punches with those statements, does he? And it really emphasizes the limitations of the human form. And what really got me to think when I first read this was, he's clearly saying that he feels the limitations of this form. So even somebody of Yogananda's stature and being, he still is at least consciously limited in some way, in his going about his day. So I guess it just springs questions forth in my mind that beings like avatars like Yogananda, are they experiencing similar limitations to what we might I might experience myself in a day-to-day life? Possibly. I don't know. Throw it out to the audience and you guys. Can you hear your thoughts?
But are you aware of your limitations? So he's suddenly aware of his limitations because he's experienced the infinite consciousness. So then he's more aware of the limits of this mortal frame, as that's described in his Samadhi poem, etc., isn't it? Whereas we're just imagining what the limits are, really.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's aware of the limitations, but still able to be 1 foot in cosmic consciousness.
Well, he I think later on in this, he said then that experience was available to me whenever I wished it.
Yeah.
right? So when he's presumably, then that means that if he's not going through that experience, then he's in the limited realm of consciousness and physical limitations.
So to a degree, he kind of still has to play the human game.
Yes, which is exactly what happens. So Mike, go on, Mike.
I remember there were the stories of Guruji when he was back in America, and it was the time after he came back from India. He was basically constantly going into samadhi, and so they wouldn't let him drive cars anymore, for example, because he would drive and then go into samadhi, and then so they would only let him drive in Encinitas down on the beach because he liked driving. And then when he went for a swim in the ocean, there was always a monk or a nun there watching out for him.
Wow.
Yeah, which is Sri Yukteswar says that shortly after, he says, "You must not get overdrunk with ecstasy. Much work yet remains for you in this world. Come, let us sweep the balcony floor. Then we shall walk by the Ganges."
Yeah, it must be so humbling, right? Imagine you're in this samadhi experience and now you're back in the body and start sweeping the floor, and then like it is once you are aware of this whole thing that he experienced, the vastness of your own spirit, then it must be twice as hard to go back, and it seems like the way to make this permanent is to still stay in the world and still keep on your work there, right? So
yeah, which is what similar to what's described. It says that's pretty much what Sri Yukteswar was telling him. He knew that he was teaching him the secret of balanced living. The soul must stretch over the cosmogonic abysses while the body performs its daily duties. And I think that's differentiating line between the two samadhis that are explained. Nirvikalpa samadhi, where Savikalpa, which is the one where you're in that experience, but Nirvikalpa is where you're in that experience full time, no matter what work or activity you're doing.
Yeah, be in this world but not of it. Yogananda says quite often.
Yes. So then he describes the poem he describes the experience in his poem Samadhi, which we're encouraged to listen to, and listeners will post a link to the London Centre did a full narration of the Samadhi poem, which 3 of us were involved in, and I think 20 other people. So we narrated it all, and that will help us hopefully memorize it, Chris and Mike.
Guruji encouraged us to memorize it. Any one of you memorized it?
What about you?
No, that's not fair. You can ask.
Teach us, Mike. Teach us.
But my favorite line from the poem are, I think I already mentioned, present, past, future, no more for me. Thoughts of all men, past, present, to come. And then there's, I swallowed, transmuted all. I in everything enters the great myself. Do you guys remember any specific? Do you remember any specific lines that were your favorites from the poem, Rodrigo?
I agree with you, Priyank. I think that's very beautiful. It's very hard for the mind to grasp this concept of no time, no past, no present, no future. And every time you read it, my mind keeps imagining and trying to conceive the beautifulness of this experience of worlds and galaxies rumbling on, and it's beautiful.
I think in one of the young adult meetings, Mike, you may have been there, we literally went through the Samadhi poem line for line, word by word, and just talked about it, and we could have gone on for the rest of the day rather than the 1.5 hours that we had allocated, and it was quite a lovely experience. Yes.
I'm gonna
go on.
I'm gonna get out of this podcast and print the poem and carry it with me every time I go from now on. Definitely.
Very nice, very nice. So then later in that section, Sri Yukteswara tells him that one might gain the power to control the whole universe, yet finds the Lord elusive still. Spiritual advancement is not to be measured by one's display of outward powers, but solely by the depth of his bliss in meditation. Which is, I thought it was quite a beautiful line as well. So let's move on to the rest of it. So just before he joins the Swami order now, so this will be the last of that. So it's a completely new phase of his life after he becomes a Swami. But there was lots of stories, for example, the cauliflower robbery, outwitting the stars, where they talked about astral bangles and gems and diamonds, and the sapphires, that Sassi and the 3 sapphires. Then there was the Hazrat, the astral being story, which was quite popular. And then there was the lovely My Master in Calcutta appears in Serampore. I don't know if you guys remember that, but there was this incident in the autobiography where Sri Yukteswara was somewhere else, and then momentarily he appeared before Yogananda and one of his friends who was in complete disbelief. And that chapter describes that exactly what happened, but it doesn't tell you why, or what was the purpose. So Sri Yukteswara said, I've been instructed to give you this divine experience, i.e. of me being in 2 places or infinite places at once. Do you have any reflections on why that story would be important to us? That's a bit of a hospital pass question, but anyone can take the reins for that question.
Right. I'll have a stab.
Go for it.
Because Yogananda is physically not in this form, and he is able to be with us all as a growing family of devotees, which seems absurd, obviously, on the face of it, physically, if you were to, live in the typical Western way of thinking. But the ability for Guruji to be somewhat omnipresent is possible, with the nature of reality. That's my
very good, Chris.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yes.
Hell, Chris is on fire today.
Nails. Well, at least 1 out of 2 hospital passes.
Nice. I feel like it was also a message sent to, I forgot the name of the other devotee that Guruji was with at the time, because afterwards Sri Yukteswara says, I talked to both of you, but only Yogananda got my message, right? And that if you're a devotee, how do I say this? Like there's basically more to it than what meets the eye, and I feel like the difference between Yogananda and this other devotee was like his belief and how in tune he was with his master, and I guess maybe that's a lesson for us as well, that if you are that in tune, then Guruji does talk to you, and he even gives you practical advice, like I'm not going to be on this train or something like that.
Yeah, I think his name was Dijen Babu. But back to your point, Chris, I think that's a very, very apt, very relevant point. I remember, I'll anonymize, but someone asked a master, how are you able to provide the personal experience and be a guru to thousands or millions of people when, how can you provide that while you're just one person? And then that master said, how was Krishna able to dance with an infinite number of gopis whilst he himself was just one? So if you know the Ras Leela, of which I've got a painting behind me about it, so it goes that there's a very famous painting actually where the gopis, which are all the milkmaids, and they're dancing, and each one of them is dancing with an exact form of Krishna. So he was saying, how is that possible? So the point is that for an elevated being such as a Yogananda or Sri Yukteswara, they're not one. They're omnipresent. They're infinite. So they can be in two places at once, or an infinite number of places at once, because they are omnipresent. And yeah.
There's stories of Jesus appearing to Yogananda multiple times, right? But twice one came with blue eyes, and the other version of Jesus came with brown, or so. I think is the way that goes. And the idea is, I can materialize however I wish, and it's the mastery over the nature of reality, over the atoms and so on. That's the lesson really behind that when you scratch the surface.
Yeah. So the other stories in the AOI before he becomes a Swami are that they go to Kashmir, or they do not go to Kashmir, and then they do go to Kashmir. Sri Yukteswar saves him from that cholera incident. There's a Heart of the Stone image story where Yogananda, is with his sister Roma and his brother-in-law, and they go through that experience. There's a beautiful story there. The university, he receives his university degree, etc., etc. So there's quite a few stories which are all glossed over. Obviously, there's not enough space or time in the Awake movie, but I'd recommend that you will refresh yourself with those, because you can read them an infinite number of times and just scratch the surface, can't you? So this Swami, yeah, go on.
Maybe we can encourage the listeners to share what their top one or top two stories are.
Yes.
I'd be really keen to hear, because there's just so much. I think, Rodrigo, what you said about the documentary itself, you pick up different things whenever you watch it, but the autobiography is, that to the nth degree, right? Each line might speak something different to you whenever you read it for the second or third time. Yes. different stories have different meanings for people. So pitching, share your stories.
Yes. So then this is an interesting thing that's not often talked about. But after his cosmic experience and cosmic consciousness, Yogananda then recites. He says that he chanted, "No birth, no death, no caste have I." That beautiful chant. And what you probably don't know is that it's a very famous chant by Adi Shankaracharya, and it's sung by many different sects in the Hindu faith. And so there's, we know the chant that's sung in English, but let me play for you how it's sung in other paths. So listen to this.
Manobuddhi ahankari chittani nam na chashrotra jive na chakrana netre na chavyomir na tejo na vayu chidananda rupa shivoham shivoham.
So you heard in that there was lots of word na chashrotrote, na jiva, na chakrane, na tejo, na vayu. So this is literally the description. I'm sure you can guess: mind, no intellect, no ego, chitta; sky, no earth, no metals, am I, etc. So it's a direct translation, and with your prowess in Hindi and Sanskrit, I know you guys know some words here and there. You can imagine that that's what the translation is. And then interestingly, which isn't Yogananda doesn't talk about, the end bit is Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. Now Shiva, we know is Shiva, I'm sure, but that's in the actual chant, Shiva. So you're saying he's saying I am Shiva, and obviously not Shiva the person, but Shiva the infinite manifestation of God as that. So I hope you enjoyed that chant. But I'll put a link on there, and you can perhaps meditate to that slightly different, the Sanskrit version, as opposed to the beautiful English chant that Yogananda has given us. And there's a Hindi version as well, which I'll also link on there. What did you guys think of that?
send you into a bit of a trance. Or
Yes.
send me into a bit of a trance.
Yeah.
I'm in awe right now.
Very good. That was the goal.
Yes.
To put Rodrigo comes in, and he gets into a state of awe. That's what we want. Hopefully, then he'll be encouraged to come back and visit us again.
Yes,
Yeah.
please do share the link with us.
Yes.
It's very beautiful.
I will.
It's the first time I hear it. Yeah.
Very nice. Yes. So as I say, it's quite a popular one, and we chant it often, but not so much the Sanskrit version that that you've just heard. So let's talk about the rest of the minute then. So he obviously joins the Swami order. So now we can refer to him as Swami Yogananda. This is before his title of Paramahansa Yogananda. So from this point, we will say Swami Yogananda. So we have this old man that says yoga is freedom. What does that mean to you guys? Yoga is freedom. Do you think it's encapsulated with the previous hour that we've just discussed?
Yes, for sure.
Any other
Absolutely.
reflections other than what we've already gone through on that?
Yeah, I mean, this kind of samadhi experience is like the ultimate freedom, and that's why I feel like it fits well afterwards. The whole freedom from the earthly bound bodies, thoughts, desires, all of this stuff.
Yes.
And then Russell Simmons says needing nothing. And that is what yoga is to him. And Russell Simmons is obviously the very famous producer, music producer, director, lots of things in the USA. But yeah, needing nothing. That's like a negative, positive aspect of what yoga would mean. Do you resonate with that, Chris?
Yeah. I suppose I would think of freedom from what? Freedom from the ego and the limitations, just like what you were saying there, is yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it? There's different interpretations of what yoga means to people, and everybody has their own take. I think the true nature kind of sums it up for me, that Vishwananda said, becoming one with joy or love, realizing your true nature, the unification of everything, and how we live in ignorance, blissful ignorance, most of the time. But yeah, it's awesome. It's just nice to hear the different interpretations of what it means to people.
Is there any interpretation that you'd like to offer that hasn't yet been discussed?
I mean, mine would just be in a word, union with everything, because so often, we've had different guests on the show that have talked about the issues in modern day living. People feel so alone, even though we've never been so connected, through the internet and there are social media platforms. But yet there's like a wave, especially in the US, of people feeling alone, and it's the farthest thing from the truth, isn't it? How we're actually unified with everything. So yeah, it's there's obviously lots of routes that we could go down there in that conversation, but just to kind of bring it back to say, it's so nice to think of the unification in yoga, that it can bring the realization of that.
Yeah. So as Chris said, Brother Vishwananda then says being one with that peace, joy, love, and true nature. That is your true nature. Rodrigo, you obviously know of Brother Vishwananda and you saw him in this
Yes.
minute. Do you have any thoughts of Brother Vishwananda?
Yeah, sure. Well, it brings to my mind when Guruji says that in sleep we experience our true nature as a soul, and I think it links very well with needing nothing and the sense of freedom. And it's very similar. Sometimes when you meditate, you sit for 15 minutes, let's say, or an hour, and you're just in that state of peace and joy. And it seems like the world for a while vanishes and everything's okay. And then when you finish your meditation, you're very quiet and peaceful, and then the world comes back and try to drag it down. Yeah.
Nice. So now we have there's 4 images of Yogananda. There's one of him on a push bike, I think it is, with 2 other people next to him, and he's looking straight at the camera. There's one with him, the boy Mukunda, and as I said, that's the image of the Mejda, the cover of Mejda, I believe. And then there's him on with a turban, and again this would be before he left, because he's still got a beard, before he left for the USA. So I think, yeah. And then there's one with him in the USA, because he's wearing his collar, his Western Indian outfit with the collar and the orange, the ochre robes, and looking slightly leaning against the wall and looking away from the camera. So there's 4 very beautiful images, which I'd encourage all of you to meditate upon and look at and keep in your heart. But that's pretty much summarizes the minute, which we have extended to a little over an hour, as we sometimes like to do, and we could no doubt go on. Does anyone have any other reflections, Mike, on anything we perhaps may have missed?
Notice that he doesn't have a beard on the push bike or in the young picture either. I wonder if he started growing his beard when he joined the ashram.
Ooh.
Teshwar, and before that he was clean shaven. Just an idea.
Interesting. And perhaps maybe. What about you, Chris? Any thoughts?
It's just been a really beautiful reflection, really, this minute, and I'm sure the listeners have enjoyed reflecting on some of their favorite stories and memories of reading the autobiography of a yogi, and I've just enjoyed it. So thanks.
Rodrigo, any reflections? Any last minute reflections?
I got to read the poem again and again and dwell on it.
I'll send you. I've made it into a document. I'll send that to you, so you can just print a 1-pager out. And
thanks.
We had to do that for the video compilation, didn't we, Mike?
Okay.
Yes, I'll send that to you. But Rodrigo, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a privilege.
Thank you guys for having me.
Privilege to
it's
have
my
you.
privilege. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Rodrigo is such an active participator in our posts. He likes everything and comments on everything, and takes the opportunity to really be involved. And we encourage all of you to do that. It really encourages us, and the feedback is obviously really fantastic. So Rodrigo, we hope you can join us next time. But thank you, everyone. Jai Guru.
Thank you, guys.
Jai Guru, everybody.
Okay.